Hi, I'm Stefan, the BMW DIY guy, and I want to show you the brand new BMW 2022 i4 M50. All right, y'all, so I'm back here at BMW Seattle today. I am really excited to bring you this brand new i4 M50. So this is the highest performing of the new i4s as BMW jumps into this EV market with both feet. Hopefully you got a chance to see my iX video of that review of that brand new technology and all that new platform. But now with the i4, you have a lot of the similar iDrive 8, the big curved screen and all of these things, but in a sedan footprint. Now there's so many cool features about this. I'm going to give you a walk around the outside, then we're going to talk about the inside a little bit, and then we're actually going to go for a drive to actually see what it feels like. I mean, does this EV still feel like a BMW? Which is, I think, really one of the biggest entries as you look at this market and you look at what BMW can bring to this market is it still that ultimate driving machine? Is it still that BMW experience that we all want? All right, so let's go ahead and get started. We're gonna give it a quick walk around, but then I also wanna show you under the hood, which with the iX we couldn't do. So let's go ahead and jump in, let's take a look. All right, so let's go ahead and start in the front, where I was fascinated to see that this actually has a hood pull on it. You can actually raise the hood. Unlike the iX where you can't, and it's not anything but a service technician can get into, I actually wanted to see this. So you're gonna see probably the largest vanity cover on a BMW motor I certainly have ever seen, and probably the largest one they've ever made, I suspect. But it is, you can take it off. I've already lifted it to take it off. So let's actually take a look at what some of this looks like on the inside. So if you forgive the shadows here, as I try to work through the shadows a little bit, you can see some of the suspension. You can see this cross brace that it has in across the nose. But it actually is kind of cool to see some of the internals of what makes this whole new platform work. So obviously not your typical motor that we'd come to expect in any of the reviews. Normally do, you know, a good motor review, but in this case we're going to be talking about all of its capabilities and capacity being here a 100% EV vehicle. But I actually thought this was kind of a cool place to start. So let's go ahead and finish our walk around. We're going to take a look at suspension, brakes, and all of those features. So when you look at the i4 M50, you're actually looking at 536 horsepower and all-wheel drive in this case, which is really cool. It has an estimated range of 245 miles, and these start at about 65.9, depending on what you want to add in. Now, as we take a look at this, there are so many analogies we can make and comparisons. We talk about features and functions that you would see on a ICE or internal combustion engine as we talk about the differential and we talk about the driveline and suspension and how all these things work, but they're just going to be a little bit different with an EV. So for example, it's electric all-wheel drive. So when you look at, your differentials and we look at the performance models that have like a limited slip differential, that's not the case in this case because it's electric, because you have electric motors out of the wheels and not an engine up in front that's driving down a drive shaft and going out to differentials and trying to do limited slip and all of the things. This really is an entirely different animal. But even with that, it electronically controls. It has wheel slip limitation instead of essentially having what is a limited slip differential. You have adaptive M suspension as well. Now, also when you look at the brakes here, we can look at our blue calipers. Here's we look down here for a second. That's the other really big monster difference that you're going to get with an EV. You have recuperative braking. So depending on what mode you're in, your brakes will help return energy actually back to the car. So if you look at it, your brake energy regeneration, it'll give you a maximum rate of 195 kilowatts possible here on the i4. So even as you brake, it's going to be trying to return energy back into the car. Now, as we look at the wheels, these are special light alloy wheels that come in this model because with EVs, weight matters so much. And so they've really done quite a good job in trying to reduce weight wherever they can. I actually noticed how light the hood is as well when I was taking it up and taking it down. Now, one of the things I'd love to see is the advanced TPMS system. Really, really cool. So this is where BMW, you can scan your tires into the car. You'll tell it exactly what kind of tires you have. It will monitor them for heat and temperature, just like you would from a number of systems over the years, including, of course, tire pressure. But it'll start to estimate tire wear. It'll give you digital tire diagnosis. It gives you quite a bit of information about your tires rather than just air pressure, or temperature. So BMW really continues to innovate on that, and is really a cool function that you can add and have in this car as you really kind of understand how all of these systems work together. And I really look forward to seeing that in action. But with that said, let's go ahead and jump in and take a look at some of the options on the inside. All right, so this car is actually Portimao blue on cognac, but even as we approach the car and take a look at the interior, one of the things I find most striking just from the beginning is what we saw in the iX, and that's the new iDrive 8 with this gigantic curved screen. Now, obviously it's off right now, and we'll take a look at that in just a second. And we look at the Sensitech seats and all your different options that you can get for interior. But this really is a game changer. This really does just change everything about the interior and how you're going to interact with the car and this screen as you drive it. But let's jump in and let's take a look at some of those functions. All right, so let's go ahead and start with the iDrive and center console first. In many ways, this is going to be familiar if you've seen the latest 4 Series Grand Coupe. It's not changed all that much, but that's also a good thing. This is a really good design, and it's very familiar if you're coming out of a BMW with similar iDrive controls. So this isn't going to be a radical change for you, though I do find it interesting the start button is blue instead of, say, red. But also being the M50, you have Sport, Comfort, and Eco Pro mode buttons here just on a single touch as you go through it, plus all of your parking controls, traction control, and so on. But the really big thing here to take a look at is the iDrive screen itself. You're looking at a 12.3-inch information display here in the center, and you're looking at a 14.9-inch control display instead of gauges. And this is going to change significantly as we drive and as we go through modes. So I'll walk you through all of that in just a second. But as we look at this kind of familiarization with the cockpit, this really is that new design that we first saw launched in the iX, now here in the i4. And BMW has actually announced that this iDrive 8 screen, you're going to start to see across all of the models, and all of them, you know, whether it's the new M3, the new M4, all of them are going to be advancing forward into this curved screen that you've seen in the iX and the i4. All right, so let's focus here on the infotainment system here just for a minute. Now, this iDrive 8 really is a huge step forward, and I don't mean just the screen size. So not only have they improved the real estate and the technology that's driving all of this, so the system is faster and more responsive, it can be updated over the air, so your map updates and system updates, you're just going to get seamlessly. The days of where you had to come in to the dealership to have them update your maps is long gone, which is really cool. And we're going to talk about the navigation here in a second, because I think that's where a lot of this functionality really shines. I actually think I would use the navigation in this probably more than any other BMW I've ever owned, because this is where the technology really starts to shine. Now, when you look at the navigation, one of the things about this that makes this so special is with this EV and you have a route plugged in, the car is going to be trying to figure out the best possible route, the best and most efficient way to get where you want to go. But then if you're exceeding the range of your car, it will make suggestions for you of the best places to stop at charging stations. Now, there's a charging station right here that might be a little bit hard to see, but it will begin to give you intelligent information about that charging station if it's available. How busy is it? Is it a 200-watt station that's going to get you charged quickly for a rapid charger? Is it an EVgo station, which I'll talk about a little bit more in just a second. But this is where that technology really starts to shine. Now, the other thing that I find with this, and as the control menus will go away here in just a second, the other thing that I think is really just next generation is that right there. Full screen navigation. This is like going from a postage stamp to suddenly having like a laptop sized screen to actually deal with your navigation, which I think is a really big deal as you try to navigate through traffic or a cityscape like this, or you're going long distances. I think this is where this large screen is really going to shine and is really going to make the biggest difference. But there's so much functionality in this that it's really impossible to go through it all. We just kind of go back to the top level here for a second. I mean, for example, by default, you're looking at the audio system that has 10 speakers and a 205-watt amplifier. If you do go ahead and get the Harman Kardon upgrade, you actually have 16 speakers, and it has a 7-channel amplifier. So really significant difference if you want to do that upgrade. Now, one of the other things you can add to this car is the ambient light upgrade, which this one actually has. So it adds LED fiber optic light guides through the doors. They can react to your music. They can react to a phone call. If the door is open when the car is on, they can blink to make sure that people can see them. But all kinds of different functionality. Now, one of the other things I want to do is when we look at the main display here in just a second, we're going to do our best to try to capture, you know, the BMW iconic sounds, as they call it. But let's talk about that in a second. Let's go ahead and fire up the main display, and we'll take a look at that. Okay, so let's see, and hopefully my microphone will really effectively capture what this car sounds like when it starts, because again, EVs are so different. All right, so hopefully you could actually hear that kind of startup chime and actually some of the tones as it's talking about seatbelts and some of the other things. But BMW is really invested deeply in this, again, to make this not just an EV, but make it a BMW. Now, I love the way my car sounds, and I think that if suddenly it was dead silent, you'd be missing out on part of the experience. You wouldn't realize it was gone until it's gone. Now, BMW has actually realized that that's the case and invested in that. So not only does it have the acoustic pedestrian protection, of course, as it makes sound as you are driving the car up to 19 miles an hour, but here on the inside, what BMW is calling their iconic sounds electric. They've actually partnered with Hans Zimmer, the composer and Academy Award winner, you know, in all the movies that we all love, to actually have this have a very distinct audio experience as you go through the car. Now, the other thing is you get with this M50 and you go through your different modes, it actually is going to sound different depending on which mode you're in. Now, even now, and I bet you the microphone's not capturing it, it feels like there's a low rumble in the background, almost as if there was a motor that's running very, very quietly. But as we go through our different modes, as you can see, the display is going to change. We're going to talk about Sport Boost here in just a second, but it's also going to give a different audible experience as you drive the car to really make it distinctly different. So now when we look at that Sport Boost and the Sport mode that's possible here in the M50, as you can see when we go through our different options. Now the Sport Boost is really cool. So if you actually went into Sport Boost, it's going to give a combined increase of 67 horsepower to the wheels that brings you to that maximum of 536 horsepower over 10 seconds. You also see the torque increase up by 48 pounds, which will take you to 586 foot-pounds of torque, which, if you're not familiar with that, that's actually a lot. That is a tremendous amount of torque when you're driving your car. But there's so many options when you take a look at this, and of course with an EV, depending on how you drive, you're going to affect your range and how it charges. And you can see all those gauges as you look at this display as we go through the different modes, and it really does try to reflect which mode you're in with lighting and even sound once we get out and drive the car. Now, when we actually look at the charging, it has high-speed charging up to 200 kilowatts. Now, if you're using the AC wall box that you can get for this, it will charge the battery from completely empty to 100% in a little bit under 8 hours. So if you have it at home and you're using the wall box, you can use it overnight and it's going to charge. Now, if you do have access to a 200 kilowatt fast charger, you're going to see that it's going to charge in 10 minutes to increase the range by 90 miles. So if you're just going beyond what its functional range is at this time, and as you can see right here, it's saying it's got 227 miles of possible range right at the moment, that in 10 minutes you can gain 90 miles. And maybe that's enough to get you home or to your destination that you want to go. I also mentioned earlier that there is the partnership with EVgo. So, and all of that renewable energy that they're using for their charging stations, and this is what, again, will tie into your navigation, and it will tell you if they're busy, all in this really kind of driver-focused cockpit, which I really love from BMW. It hasn't been such a feature for so long. But as you look at all this different functionality throughout, I think the other thing that's really going to matter is actually getting out and driving the car. And I think that's going to be the most important experience that we go through it. What does it feel like? Does it still feel like a BMW, even though it's a full EV? What is the sound? What does it sound like? What is that audio experience? And what's the driving and handling? So with that, let's actually go ahead and take it out. So as we go through this, I want to give a good driving experience as we go through Seattle here, you know, both in comfort mode. We'll also try the sport mode. We also may try the sport boost at some point, because I understand that really is quite an impressive thing. So as we come out here, and the sound experience is interesting. I expect to hear a motor, but you just kind of hear a multi-tonal hum. Impressions for sure. It's just quiet. Now, for those of you, you know, that have really been hardcore EV drivers and owners for years, that's not going to be a surprise. But you know, I'm coming out of an M2 Competition, which isn't exactly quiet. But the driving tone is really good. It's this multi-tonal sound that's in the background as if the car was running, and really gives you a sense, and also increases a little bit in speed as well. So we're driving in comfort mode right now. I want to get of what it would be like to drive this around, you know, through normal city driving. As we get up here on I-90, and I'll show you a little bit of Seattle and the lake as we go over, of what that feels like. So here we go, coming out of the light. Yeah, it's quick. There's really not a lot of pedal. It's very quick. That power really is instantaneous as you come around. It's impressive. Now, if we get lucky, hopefully we won't have traffic that's too bad here today, and I can get a sense of what this is like. But yeah, even in comfort mode, yeah, it gets up and goes very quickly. And being quieter, it's a little surprising. That was a little bit faster than I intended, I'll be honest. And just bang, you're going very, very quickly. You don't have that sense of sound of your motor to use as a gauge of how fast you're going. So I think that would be an important adjustment to make driving this car. But this may sound like an interesting, you know, maybe even criticism, but this just feels ordinary, which is what it should. This feels like a BMW to me. I don't feel like I'm driving a spaceship. This feels like a BMW. It responds very well as we go through these turns. It's quick coming out of that light. It's very comfortable. This really does feel like a BMW, which I think is a very important distinction to make as they move into the EVs. All right, so let's get a little bit more of Seattle as we go. All right, guys, so this is the first time I've driven the i4. I'm in sport boost mode. I've heard it's really impressive. So as we come around here, we make sure we're going straight. Here we go. Yeah, that, wow. And I'm hoping that the microphone captured the little bit of different sound. It has a much deeper note to it. Even now it has this lower resonance in sport mode. Yeah, that actually snapped my head back. I actually had my head forward a little bit looking for traffic, and that wasn't full throttle. That was really impressive. I mean, really impressive. Enough so I'm not sure I'd use sport boost mode if you're not going in a straight line until you're used to this car, because wow, man, we talk about performance and high horsepower equivalency. That was impressive. So, and I like the sport mode. I like this deeper note that it sounds like. Well done, Hans Zimmer. Very, very cool. All right, guys, kind of reluctantly back here to the dealership to bring it back, because as always, I would love more time in the car, but this is really intended to give a sense of what it would be like to take it for a test drive and give you a technology walkthrough of what's so different, especially about this new i4 M50. This car is in definitely high demand, so I should probably give the keys back. And I'm really, really grateful to BMW Seattle for giving me this opportunity to bring this car to you so you can get a sense of what it would be like yourself. As always, I highly suggest you come down and check it out yourself. That is the best way to get a sense of all the technology and performance, which is really impressive. But come down and try it out yourself. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Please click subscribe and the little alarm bell. It makes a huge difference to my channel, and I have a ton of content coming that I cannot wait to bring to you guys. And I'll see you on my next video.